All right, we can begin the work session of the Mayor and Council for Monday, December 17th, 2012. The time is now 7 p.m. We can begin by having the public meeting statement, which is that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by sending notices on December 23rd, 2011 to the Bergen Record and the Ridgewood News, by positioning notice of this meeting on the bulletin board in the lobby of the Borough Hall, and filing a notice of the meeting with the municipal clerk. I'd like to remind everyone that we have 3 exits in council chambers, 1 to the back and 2 to the front. We are on the record. Everything is being recorded, voice as well as video. If any member of the public wishes to be seen and heard, they can stand at the appropriate time, be recognized, give us their name and phone number, and come forward and speak at the microphone so we can get you on the record. I'd like to begin the meeting by just calling the roll.
Councilwoman Murphy?
Here.
Councilman Court?
Here.
Councilman Fuller?
Here.
Councilman Young?
Here.
Councilman Baldwin?
Here.
Councilman Papaleo?
Here.
And Mayor Mascarenhas?
Here. All right. We have a couple of topics on for the Borough Administrator. One is fallen tree at the swim club. I think we already have a memo from Sam Seresti, who reviewed the borough's lease with the swim club, and based upon Sam's reading of the lease, the responsibility or liability for the tree after, I think it's September 15th, gets transferred to the borough until May, when the swim club reopens. So based upon Sam's opinion, it would be the borough's responsibility to remove the tree. Is that right, Alan? Is that your understanding?
Yes, we assume during that period of time all the risks and liabilities or injuries that might occur on that property. So it would behoove us to limit our exposure and remove the tree, especially during the winter months when the ground is hard and John Lynch and crew can get in there without too much damage to the property.
All right, we're lucky enough to have Mr. Lynch in the audience, so he's aware that when he gets a little break in the action, which isn't often, he can make some arrangements to move that fallen tree on the swim club property. Next is the storm damaged sidewalks. Again, we have a memo from Sam Seresti. I don't know if everybody got to read it. It was very recent, but Sam reviewed the ordinance and confirmed that under the present ordinances here in town, responsibility for the sidewalks falls on the adjacent homeowner or property owner if it's a commercial property, and that the borough wouldn't have any responsibility to replace broken sidewalks, even in a situation such as the hurricane that lifted up shade trees and destroyed sidewalk slabs. He does recommend that if we are going to if we are all of the mindset that we should repair the broken sidewalks, since it was the borough shade tree that caused the damage, that we should do so by resolution, and cite in the resolution that the event happened during a state of emergency and a storm, which is why we are changing the otherwise long-standing policy. So, we could take that up under new business, in what form we want to go forward on the sidewalk damage. All right? Anything else you want to add to that, Alan?
No, Mayor, we have John Lynch here, Superintendent of Public Works, has indicated to me that there's about 38 resets and 40 reconstructions. That hasn't changed too much, but I know he's progressing as fast as he possibly can with the removal of the stumps. There's also a small amount of curb work included in there also that was damaged by some of the public trees.
Okay. And we're currently investigating with New Milford to get to see if there's a contractor that wants to tackle the job of giving us a very competitive price to do resets and repairs to sidewalks at a fraction of what it would cost an individual homeowner. So once we get that information from New Milford, and once we decide if and when we're going to replace the sidewalks, then we can put it in the form of a resolution.
Mayor? Alan, you said that would be a reimbursable expense under FEMA, or would be able to submit that as a claim?
Well, I raised this issue at the applicant's briefing, at the kickoff meeting, and now with our project official. So the latest word is from the project official that if the council changes their policy or creates an exception to the policy, he would write it up as an eligible expense. How much we would get back, that's subject to review and evaluation. But he said, at least at this point, that he would include it on our project worksheet as a public, expense.
Thank you.
Okay. There are 5 items on the work session consent agenda. Does any member of the public, any member of the council want to pull any separate item out for discussion or a vote before the 8 o'clock meeting? No? Okay.
All eyes on that, Mayor?
Can I have a motion just to pass the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? All right, we have a report from our Finance Committee on a policy for debt and fund balance. Alan?
I defer to the chair. Ed?
I'll just give a brief overview, and Alan can maybe go into the details. But just starting at least 2 years ago, when Councilman Porco was the chair of the Finance, we started talking about adopting some fiscal policies going into the future to tackle some of the structural and other problems we have with the budget from year to year. And the 2 areas we decided to initially focus on were the fund balance and our debt management policy. So when I became the chairman, we continued these discussions, and Councilman Bartoloni did some research and drafted some policies. We've had several vigorous debates, I would say, at the Finance Committee level. It was Councilman Papaleo, Councilman Bartoloni, myself, and also 2 members of the Citizens Budget Committee who participated in most of the discussions. So we did get some outside input. And at our last meeting, we did go through 2 policies that were redrafted and modified by Alan with regard to fund balance and with our debt management, and we agreed to bring it to the council for consideration at this point. And Alan, if you want to get into some of the details on both policies.
Well, the fund balance policy provides for a minimum balance based on what the annual tax levy is, a percentage of 5% based on the tax levy, and a target balance of 8%. So that is what we would be working towards. It also has a plan to achieve the minimum and the target balances, which puts into effect certain tools for the mayor and council to use during the budget season to try and obtain those balances. This is a long-term process. This is not something that will happen overnight. In 1 or 2 budget seasons, this will take many years to achieve the minimum and the target balance, but it sets forth a plan for that to be put into motion. And the Finance Committee also talked about certain goals as well, which are not formally incorporated into the policy. On the debt side, the debt goes through certain definitions of debt, but the main thrust is to create a 1% cap on the total indebtedness that the borough would have. This would be a cap beyond the state cap of 3.5% of the average of the equalized valuation basis. The borough's cap would be 1% of the last locally assessed valuation as equalized by the Division of Taxation. So that will give you a ceiling number for your total indebtedness. And there's also another level here, and that is the amount that would be appropriated in the budget for permanent debt. And that's 11% of the total prior year expenditures. And then there's also a process here of review of our capital requests. The budget preparation process would incorporate these techniques into it to provide a review of our capital items so that we might be able to achieve the goals that are enumerated in the debt management policy. Both of these policies are recommended by the state of New Jersey as a best practice, and the rating agencies strongly encourage governing bodies to formally adopt both of these types of policies. It's the Finance Committee's recommendation that these policies be adopted by resolution as a pilot project. We want to see how this works out. By doing it at a resolution at this time will allow some flexibility, and then if it does work out, the Mayor and Council can certainly memorialize these in an ordinance form at a later date, a later point in time.
All right. Any comments from anybody? Does the Chair of the Finance Committee want to make a motion to put this on for a formal resolution for the 2013 budget to be implemented?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make that motion.
And I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can we get a copy of it? Is there a hard copy or?
It was included with our packet on Friday.
It's only going to be put on the agenda
Okay.
for formal adoption for implementation for the next budget cycle. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilwoman Murphy?
Yes.
Councilman Ford?
Yes.
Councilman Capola?
Yes.
Councilman Mignon?
Yes.
Councilman Guadalupe?
Yes.
Councilman Caballero?
Yes.
And I want to thank Alan for his help in guiding us through the process. I see Mr. Roman, who helped us also, so we appreciate your input also in getting these policies together.
Okay, great. Is anybody here from the Dakotas Law Firm to speak on the redevelopment of the New Jersey Transit property?
Excuse me, Mayor, we told them to come at 7:30 because we were originally going to have closed session at 7.
We're going to go into closed session now. We have two matters in closed session, but there was a change in that. The item regarding Sergeant Chris Cheevers is no longer in closed session. So if Sergeant Cheevers wants to come forward, sit at the table.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Administrator, council people. Denise, how are you? For over 17 years, it's always been a sign of positive things to come when I've been in this room in person, face-to-face, before the governing body. Whether it was when I was sworn in as a patrolman, or being recognized for my efforts and successes as a detective, or being promoted and sworn in as a sergeant. I've always been and remain proud to serve the borough and the police department. My service record, assignments, promotions, letters of commendation, awards, evaluations, and the reputation I have among the officers of this department and throughout the law enforcement community reflect that pride. The borough, and more specifically the police department, have given me opportunities to succeed, which I have grasped, and my efforts have reflected positively on the borough. You're all aware of several medical conditions I'm currently contending with. I've kept Lieutenant Kern and Chief Caridi up to date with daily reports, some bi-weekly information deadlines, monthly reevaluations, and bi-monthly reviews. There's an outstanding team of physicians assisting me in the management of the effects and symptoms of my conditions, the continuing diagnostic process, and the work of managing my health permanently. The process of adding, modifying, and subtracting medications, treatments, and therapies is an arduous and time-consuming process. I will be seeing 9 doctors between now and January 15th. This does not include the 2 additional doctors the borough has chosen to send me to. I've been extremely fortunate to have the support of my family throughout this process and to have relatives with similar diagnoses that have not only survived the worst, but have been able to thrive while dealing with the adjustments their medical conditions have made to their lives. My faith sustains me, and my family's love gives me strength as I continue to work towards my goals of a long, strong, active, healthy life. I'd like to thank you all, not only for your time tonight, but for your continued support and belief in me throughout my career.
All right, thank you. Any questions from any members of council? Sergeant, I just want to say on behalf of everybody that we hope that you're back up to your, former capacity in the shortest amount of time possible. We're all pulling for you here to be able to perform all of the duties of your position. I know that you're performing all your duties of your position now in a light capacity. This council would like to see you back at full capacity. I know it's not possible right now, but I know that you're working towards that, and we hope that you continue to work towards that and that you have great success.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. And that's it, right?
No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Now we can go into, I can have a motion to go into closed session so that we can discuss the other item on our agenda, which is potential litigation, and we can also hear from our labor attorney, Mr. Giacobbe. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. This isn't going to take very long.
No, Peg. No.
What?
That they were? We never saw them. I got there. No. When are you Mary Ann stuff coming to the meeting?
Yeah.
Probably. You can't get rid of it. Oh, thank God. The lawyers are here.
The planner's here. The planner's here.
Yes.
King of the planners.
Speak of the devil. Speak of the devil.
Yes.
What are we gonna? Board of Ed must want to yell at us about something. No. They put the other guy in for him? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can't put him. Did you know the guy? No, I had no idea. I didn't even know who the hell he was. Yeah, I mean, it's part of that team. Yeah. Well, he's qualified. Yeah, he used to be. He's a former superintendent. Yeah. From what I read in the paper. No, I can't see how they put Chris Ilder. I don't know what he has a job. John? I don't remember. He doesn't even own a house. I mean, I would think that should be qualified. Like, you actually pay some form of taxes or something.
All right, we're back in our work session. We're going to have another 15 minutes of a work session, then we're going to go into our public meeting beginning at 8 p.m. To finish up with our work session, we have a presentation from J. Sheldon Cohen, Esquire, Francis Reagan, Esquire, and our planner, Mr. Phillips, regarding information that they're going to give us on the New Jersey Transit property.
Mayor, Lee Cohen apologizes for not being here. He got pulled away on another client matter. As you said, we're here to discuss with you the transit property and the New Bridge redevelopment area. And please correct me if I misstate anything in regards to what's taken place, or at least what I understand is taking place, in the last year and a half as it relates to this site. Because it's my understanding, based on what I've reviewed, that was provided to us by the borough, as well as a conversation I had with some folks at New Jersey Transit, that Transit had issued an RFP, I guess, towards the end of last year, about a year ago, and I guess, proposals were due earlier this year, and they didn't get any proposals other than, I guess they did get a response from one particular developer, but it wasn't in conformance with the RFP. And I guess that was Avalon Bay, who I guess, I'm not saying subsequent to that, but I guess concurrent with that, they were pursuing a development piece in Hackensack. I guess a stone's throw from the site, and they're well under construction on that. And I don't know, how serious they were looking at this site, or it was something that they were just trying to play both sides of the coin to lock one site up in close proximity to the train station. I know in my discussions with Transit had indicated that they hadn't gotten the kind of information that they were expecting, that they could give it an evaluation. And my understanding is that the borough and borough reps participated, in an evaluation committee with Transit on this. And based on my recent conversation with Transit, I guess they've reached out to the borough and want to know, how the borough would like to proceed. To take a step back, I've worked with Transit, and I know Paul has over the years, and I've worked with representing a number of municipalities who have transit stations that went through an RFP process with Transit. And unfortunately, Transit makes it very difficult for someone to put together an economically feasible proposal to redevelop their properties. At least that's my experience. I worked in Hamilton a number of years ago. I've worked in Boundbrook, worked in Somerville, and they make it very difficult because they include certain requirements that they need to meet. In this instance, as far as River Edge, they were talking about a 650-space parking deck that they saw as the need for parking, and they said over a 20-year period, so they weren't looking for it to be constructed right up front. But that's a potential $14 million expense that they're basically asking the developer to put into their pro forma. 5-7 years ago, that was difficult, even in the best economic times, for a developer to try to deal with. In today's market, it's very, very difficult, particularly based on the density that the redevelopment plan allows, which I think was around 130 units, in that range. With those kind of parameters, it's going to be very difficult for somebody to put together a plan for that kind of, for developing that property, at least in my experience. And I think it's somewhat reflected in the lack of responses that Transit got. And unfortunately, as I said, a lot of it has to do with the demands and the requirements that Transit puts in these RFPs. As I said, I've seen it be unsuccessful in a number of other communities. And I'm not sure that I have any magic wands, but I think one of the things that you want to consider doing is when we sit down with Transit, assuming you want to do that, is to have a frank conversation with them about that. Is there a way, one, that parking that Transit needs can be shared parking and be utilized by both development, of that site, as well as for commuter parking. Don't know how Transit's going to react to that, because the other factor that made it difficult too is Transit wants to be paid for their land, whether it be through a ground lease or through an outright sale. So they want you to pay for their property, and this is a developer, pay for their property, build them a parking deck. And if the density is not there, and I don't think in this instance there's sufficient density for that to happen, it's very difficult to have any real expectations that that a proposal is going to be forthcoming. Paul, you can jump in if you want on the density aspect.
I would just echo Frank's comments, and I've also had some dealings with Transit in the past. And if you do some simple math here, I think what they are asking for was just something that kept all the developers away. And it's my understanding that even Avalon's response was more trying a get-in-the-door response, sort of a long shot, as opposed to responding to all the requirements that were set forth in the RFP. I mean, if you do some simple math, and they were talking about perhaps the 650 spaces in phases. That might be over 2 phases realistically, but just do the math on a 650 space garage at $20,000 plus per space, plus That doesn't count for any parking for the residential or any other of the uses that were contemplated. So you're probably talking, assuming there's no shared parking, there's 800 spaces. Do the math, you're already at $16 million or more. Say you can achieve the 130 residential units, that's $125,000 per unit that the developer is going to have to absorb, and it doesn't even include the cost of the dirt. So, I mean, we both came to this conclusion independently, that, you look at this, and now we know why there, was one backdoor response.
Yeah.
The math just doesn't add up, and Frank brings up a good point. Even in the best of times, even in 2007, I'm not sure you would have gotten responses to that. You may have in 2006, 2007, when things were good, but certainly with the world having changed since then, I'm not surprised that you got the one response the way you did in the form that you got it. So, I would echo Frank's comments. If this needs to be pursued, I think that the municipality needs to sort of go back to transit. Whether or not, you'll have any success remains to be seen, but I think that you really need to go back to them and I think put the cards on the table and explain to them, you have consultants that looked at this on your behalf, and here's kind of what they're saying. Is there some middle ground to go with this? And you were talking, Frank, about maybe a expression of interest as opposed to...
And I don't know if anybody here knows. I mean, Transit indicated that it had gone through an expression of interest process, so that was their first step in the process. Part of the problem with Transit and their procurement process is it's done through their purchasing department. And we're talking a redevelopment project. We're not talking, purchasing rail cars. And that's part of the difficulty with Transit is that the process that they follow when they're soliciting proposals for transit-owned property, for transit-oriented development, it goes to their purchasing department. Years back, they didn't do that. And you saw the document. I mean, the document is this thick, and that would scare anybody away. I mean, I went through the document, and it's absurd, the level of requirements that a developer has to respond to. I mean, if you're providing goods, services to transit, that's one thing. You're used to filling out the kind of forms that they have. And that's the challenge in working with transit is you've got to, that's the process that they've been using. And I don't know that they're going to be willing to vary that process. But one of my thoughts is go back to, an expression of interest and try to see if we can work with transit to have them allow for a little more flexibility in that expression of interest, require, much less in terms of submission from developers, just to see what the level of interest would be from the development community in doing some type of development there. Build in some flexibility.
Yeah.
There's no commitment in the expression of interest by transit or the borough, but really just to find out if the development community is willing to do something there. If they are willing to do something
and
there,
under what
are they?
Conditions?
Yeah, under what conditions? What are they willing to do? I don't know that transit will even agree to that, but I think that's the only thought that I have and recommendation that would be the thing to possibly do.
To that end, maybe Paul could speak to this. It seems that the original programmatic elements of the plan weren't workable from the beginning. In terms of the original proposal, almost 1,000 spaces when you add on the uses for the commercial, the retail, and the residential components they originally proposed. Should we eliminate those requirements? Because I think the original expressions of interest, what basically the 6 developers who responded at that point said was the original plan wasn't workable. Whether it was economic conditions or whatever, they couldn't build what we said that they were supposed to build.
So you had 6 responses?
There were 6.
Okay.
They shortlisted,
The DOI? Okay.
yes, and the 6, I believe they shortlisted the 6 to 4. We'd have to check with them. And out of the 4, they only got the one final response from Avalon Bay. So do we just rescind all the original requirements under the redevelopment plan and see what people propose for the site? But
I think, and I looked at this redevelopment plan as well as the other 3, not in the same level of detail. I mean, I think in today's market, and given the fact that these are very detailed form-based plans, which is something you typically would negotiate with a developer as opposed to putting together in a vacuum, I think that the plan needs to be relooked at. I really do. It's a different world out there, and I guess I don't know to what extent what came first, Ed. Is how much did the transit proposal piggyback off the redevelopment plan, or was it vice versa?
I don't know,
Because
but
that's an
I'm sure they were
important question that I
dovetailed
would-
together.
yeah.
They're dovetailed together, obviously. I think
Yeah.
the previous planner worked with Transit to come
Yeah.
up with that.
And while I don't disagree with Paul that the plan probably needs to be relooked at, and ideally, you'd love to have mixed use. That's what you want to encourage. But in today's market, that location, you've got a lot of retail, obviously, that you want to see developed right across the street. I don't know that there's enough demand for retail across the street, for retail at the station, and in other places, when you have Route 4 there, office market, the vacancy rate in Bergen County, North Jersey is 18% plus. I don't think the office market, is going to come back anytime soon. So, I mean, that was the elements in the plan. It was the office, the retail, and the residential. I'm not sure that it's realistic to expect that you're going to get that mixed use. Maybe some small service retail that might service residential that's built there and in the immediate neighborhood. And I think it's worth looking at the plan. I don't know that you necessarily need to amend the plan at this stage, because I think the more important thing, assuming you can get, work with transit, is to really get back out there and seek expressions of interest again, and hope that you can get 6 people, that you can sit down around the table, try to get transit to agree. Let's sit down with these folks. And I don't know if you did, as part of the process, if they sat down with those 6 just to pick their brain a little.
Yeah. The original plan was the result of a visioning process with the entire community invited. So New Jersey Transit wasn't part of that process, but it was an outreach to the community to engage their ideas and their preferences as to what they would like to see down there.
And it's not unique by any means, and it makes sense. The problem is there are certain challenges in today's market that...
But it was a dozen years ago.
Yeah, and Paul and I have talked about this. I don't know what your appetite is for additional density, because I do really think that the only way that you're going to attract somebody that's going to take a real interest in this, if you're willing to consider additional density. What that density is, I don't know. I don't know that Paul knows.
Well, I don't know what the right number is. I see this as a principally residential site with perhaps some retail on the ground level. I don't see office here at all. And certainly I don't see in today's market, and developers will not build a combination of retail, office, and residential at this site in this market. It's not going to happen, and that's what the vision plan and the redevelopment plan contemplate. So, and I agree with Frank. I wouldn't touch this. I wouldn't spend the time, effort, or money to touch this at this point until you were to first have conversations with transit and then perhaps restart the process of trying to get some interest from developers. And you also get some, if you can do that, you get some sort of free information from the development community as to how they see the site from the standpoint of market and economic feasibility.
I think we sort of got that from Avalon Bay. They basically, and actually, we got that from the original expressions of interest, was basically they're all essentially residential developments.
Yeah.
Scaled back, all of them talking about the difficulties of putting that parking garage,
Right.
particularly at the original levels they were talking about.
Which is why, Ed, I think you need to engage with transit and see if there's any flexibility in terms of transit, in terms of either total number of parking spaces, the ability to do shared parking, which Frank mentioned, because that's the problem. Those spaces, the developers can't underwrite that cost and make a project feasible. Just can't do it.
Would it make sense to look at the other redevelopment properties that are out there as maybe being supplemental or complementary to this project as well, instead of looking at each one as individual projects?
You're talking about the 3 other...
The 2 other sites, yes.
There are 2 other... Okay. You could look at those as well. I kind of always thought that from your perspective, this was kind of the centerpiece, but obviously there's been issues...
It is, but we do have 3 redevelopment areas that have been...
Look, I glanced at them when they were provided, but I knew you wanted to focus on that. I know that there's a certain level of detail in those other plans that probably would need to be relooked at in today's market to provide some more flexibility and not be so detailed on the form-based zoning, which again is very difficult to undertake in a vacuum when you don't have a developer at the table where you can negotiate these things that ultimately go into the plan. And again, we're living in a different world today than 5 years ago.
And I think the beauty of this site is site control. It's transit in the borough. I guess most of those other sites include primarily privately owned property.
But they are designated redevelopment areas.
But they are designated redevelopment areas, so I don't dispute that, and you know, that's one step in the right direction, but that's what's so attractive about this site, is that the site's under really, you know, controlled by, by transit and the borough, so that's helpful. But I think it's worth looking at the others.
Can I ask a question this way? In a typical redevelopment process, shouldn't the borough be taking the lead then in doing the RFP, or should the property owner itself be doing it?
I mean, unfortunately, when you're dealing with transit, they're the ones, they insist on taking the lead when it involves their property. They're a state agency, and unfortunately, they are governed by certain rules and regulations. And I mean, another unfortunate thing is, in the past, the executive level at transit was much more sensitive and in tune to the importance of transit-oriented development and how that was important to transit and transit's future. The mindset at the executive level, as far as I know, is not what it was back then, and their focus is primarily on what they do, and that is provide commuter rail service. Nothing wrong with that. That is what they do. But and there was more flexibility years back. And unfortunately, when it comes to transit's property, they want to take the lead because, they said it's our property, and we get to make the determination as to how it's going to be, disposed of, and what we're going to require from there. Whether you can push them a little, I think that's the only logical way to go on this. Whether we would be successful, I can't tell you.
Just real quick, what do you think would be the possibility of the borough trying to negotiate the purchase of that property? To
With
control our
transit?
fate, from transit.
It's tough to say, but it's worth talking to transit. As I said, the biggest hurdle to overcome with transit is the parking, and if there's a way to factor that into the negotiations, I mean, not giving it a whole lot of thought, but it's something worth considering.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Reagan. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. We have to begin our 8 o'clock meeting. We want to thank you for making your presentation.